Hello, this is Courtney Murdoch from Love Lives On, and today I will be speaking with Michael Zadoorian about how we grieve the loss of a pet. He's an accomplished writer and a published author. So welcome, Michael, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me, Courtney.
So, as a huge animal lover, I was really touched by the article that you wrote for the Huffington Post, in which you share your grief about the death of your cat, Bongo. Would you mind sharing your story with our viewers?
Sure. At about the end of last year, my cat Bongo became ill, and we found out seriously ill, and he, ultimately passed on, and I found myself afterwards just really having a hard time dealing with his death, and I went through a long period of grieving very hard, and what I noticed was that I was kind of hiding my grief, as if I wasn't allowed to have grief for a cat, and it was a strange sort of thing that I had noticed. I noticed, shortly there had been an experience at my vet too, where I noticed another man who had been kind of ashamed of the grief he had for his cat, and it started getting me thinking about men and cats, and how we are perhaps allowed to grieve more for other creatures than we are for other ones, and so that's what started the idea for the essay. And I also sort of wrote it just as kind of a catharsis, I suppose, just because, so that is really where it started, and I just kind of wanted to examine the idea of men and cats and grief, and the ideas that people have about how much we're allowed to grieve for a particular creature.
Yeah. So what were some of the different emotions that you struggled with when you were grieving Bongo?
Well, I think it was definitely just sort of a grief. I mentioned one thing in the essay about weeping over his litter pan.
Yeah,
right?
I got a good laugh from
because my other cat was there at the time, and she was like looking at the storage space where he usually sat, and it was strange, just because I'm like, okay, I couldn't help but to not see the absurdity, what felt like the absurdity of this, but she's yowling because she didn't get any closure or anything like that either. He just disappeared one day, and so that was one of those things that I just kept noticing over and over again, and I did notice myself kind of hiding my grief, and that was that, and I was going through a lot of other things in my life as well at that particular time, which I think may have contributed to this very, very intense reaction I had. But like I say in the essay too, none of which is meant to diminish my love for my cat, because I was crazy about him.
Yeah. And in your article, you said that you had what many people would consider an inappropriate amount of grief for a cat. Why do you feel that society doesn't validate deep grief for the loss of a pet?
I'm not entirely sure, and that's certainly one of the things I wanted to at least examine or talk about in the essay. I was, I think for men, I talked about in the essay too about how it seems like there's a bit of a, for me, it's like how much is a 200-pound man allowed to grieve for a 10-pound tabby, and it felt like I wasn't allowed much. It was the sort of thing where, people would just seem to have this attitude of like, okay, man, that's enough. Shake it off. I don't want to hear about it. It's just a cat. And, this was one of those things where in the reaction after the article, so many people came to me with similar stories about, my husband's friends. My husband's really upset about our cat dying, and his friends are like, shake it off, dude. It's a cat.
Yeah.
And it just seemed, like why do we do this? Why are you not allowed to feel what you're feeling? And so I definitely think that we're sort of, especially, and I'll just do the gender side, but I think especially men are kind of not allowed to sort of feel that much, or we think we're not allowed, which is its own problem, and that's just also something that men do to each other too. It's one of the many stupid things that men do to each other.
Yeah, let's not get started on that, right?
Exactly.
So do you think that we as a society value some pets more than others? And does this translate into a greater tolerance of grief for that type of animal? So, for example, do we understand grief after a dog dies more than we would understand grief after, like, a goldfish, for example, or a hamster dies?
Sure. I think the world is more accepting of people grieving for a dog. And I don't know why that is.
Yeah, like you brought up that question of size. Like, what is it that
people love dogs, and also maybe it is because of size or weight, or that's something that pops up a lot in the piece. And why is that? But it's also, of course, about an emotional connection, and I do think that sure, you can have an emotional connection with a goldfish or a hamster, definitely. But with all of us and all our pets, it's about sort of what we project onto them as well. But dogs are king, in here in America, and people just, they love their dogs, and that's completely wonderful. They should, but I do think there is more of an acceptance between, grieving for a larger beast or creature or whatever than there is for something smaller. It may tie into the whole like why we eat certain animals and why we don't.
100%.
Like, those are cute.
Yeah.
Those are let's eat those. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
I agree. How would you explain to someone that the loss of a pet can hurt just as much as, like, the loss of a relative, for example?
Again, I think it's about that emotional connection. I mean, there are people that love their animals more than they love their families, and that's a sad situation, somewhat, but that doesn't make it not happen. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you feel you're allowed to, you're with your pets a lot. You have
care
that
for them. You invest.
Care for them. Yeah. They rely on you, and they sense things in you, and that's not always the case with people's family. You kind of choose your pet. You don't really choose your family. That old adage, but I think you feel what you feel, and it's okay to grieve for your pet, your cat, your dog, your goldfish, and as far as people go, hopefully, if you're lucky, you have a wonderful connection with family and everything. But again, that's not always the case, and so you're just gonna. It's just about how and what you feel, right. And
grief
accept.
Such a personal experience. Everyone's going to react differently, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And how long, in your experience, did it take you to feel a little better about the loss of a beloved pet? When does the sadness go away? Does it go away? Should it go away? What was your experience with those questions?
For me, it took a few months. We're still missing him very much. And he was, really special cat. And so, I think whatever you read about grieving or whatever, it's a lot of people say that you never really stop grieving. You just learn how to live with your grief. I think that's very true. And, you just figure it out. And after a while, if you're lucky, the things that used to make you cry, make you smile.
Yeah. Well, just in anticipation of this interview last night, I was thinking about the family dog I grew up with, and those emotions came back of the grief. I was like, wow, I haven't really sat and thought about him in a long time. I have a picture of the two of us on my dresser always, but I really started feeling those emotions again. So it's true, grief never really goes away. You just learn to live with it and integrate it into your life.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
So it.
And what's your best advice for someone out there who's grieving the loss of a pet?
Um, if I had to say one thing, I would say don't go out and get another pet right
No.
away. I have a friend, and yeah, their dog died. Him and his wife, their dog died, and his wife was really broken up about it, and he just wanted to, again, as men are wont to do, try to fix the
Things,
situation,
yeah.
fix things, and and he wound up getting them another dog right away, and the dog's very sweet. But he is not that dog they had. He is not that dog,
Yeah.
and and I think that dog still has a little bit of the of the taint on it of
Mm,
being a replacement as opposed to the original, and I think it hurts a little bit to just be bereft like that for however long it takes. But I do think it helps ultimately.
yeah.
My wife and I'm sure we hadn't planned on getting another cat for a long time, but in our case, after about 4 months, our other cat was acting so sad and lost, and I think she was so used to always having another cat in the house.
Companion, yeah.
Yeah, so we kind of considered getting a new cat a little bit sooner than we would have
Hmm.
normally, and so we did ultimately adopt another cat after about 4.5 months, and it's been working out fine, and really fine. She is so much better. The cat we
Yeah.
had before just seems so much happier and healthier, and often annoyed, but
But
that is
that
even that
happens. It's like siblings, right?
she's moving around a lot more.
Yeah. And that leads into my next question about when you should consider adopting a pet, because I totally agree. Right away you might feel like you're missing something, and getting a new pet will fix your feelings of grief, but it really won't, because it doesn't
No,
replace the pet that you lost, and you have to feel those feelings.
absolutely.
So at what point do you consider adopting a new pet, and what do you do if you have feelings like, am I being disloyal to the one that you lost? What advice would you give to viewers who are struggling with that?
I think don't, like I said, don't do something right away
Hmm.
like that, because it's not going to be the same. And I give yourself time. I mean, I think everyone requires probably a different amount of
Yeah.
time, but whatever. If you still feel like you just want to fill a
Void.
cat
Yeah.
shaped hole in your life, then that might not be the right time yet. Just you'll know when you're ready, I think, and be open to it. And I don't think there's any disloyalty in it. I mean, a few people wrote me after the piece came out, and just said that there's no shame in going out and adopting another animal when you're ready, and it's you're helping another cat, and that's or dog or whatever, and that's a way to honor them too.
Exactly. Right. And at Love Lives On, we believe in celebrating our loved ones' lives now and forever. And you did something really great with ensuring Bongo's memory lived on in your heart with the list that you created. I thought that was a fantastic idea. So would you mind sharing a little bit about this list?
Sure, sure. It was when he was still around, and not feeling well, and I kind of knew I was gonna lose him, and I just started just writing down some things about him that I loved, and it was nice. It was a good thing for me to do, and every once in a while I can look back on that list of just weird way. He used to walk into a room and he would meow with like a little question mark on the end of his meow, like, "What's up?"
I love
You
the
know,
crawling
very,
into the sweater.
yes, yes. I'm at my writing desk right now, and when I was working, and that's another thing the essay is about too, about cats and writers and the
Yeah.
writing. And he would jump up on the desk and nudge me until I would like unzip my hoodie a little bit. He would climb in and just sit there.
So
And
cute.
I would forget he was even there. He was so comfortable there, and until I would get up for a cup of coffee and realize I still had a cat in my sweatshirt. And so, but yeah, so I have a whole list of those things, and it helped me. It helped me, and I wound up using a few of them in the essay as well. And somehow, for me, and I think for a lot of people who might not even be professional writers, sometimes just writing a few things down and going through your feelings in that way and seeing them on a page or a computer screen is it's cathartic, and it can be really helpful.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for taking the time to share your story with us. I know all of our viewers are going to just benefit so much from your insights on this, so thank you.
All right. Okay. Thanks very much, Courtney.
Thank you.